The universe was silent, cold, and endless when a small voice broke through the dark. It was a message, trembling with fear and full of hope. A cry for help sent by a fragile alien race called the Arindrans. Their planet was dying. Violent storms tore their lands apart. Oceans turned black and mountains burned with strange blue fire. Their technology was old, their energy sources unstable, and their people weak. They had tried everything to survive, but nothing worked. So they sent a signal into space, hoping that someone, somewhere, would listen. They didn't know if anyone ever would. For days, the signal floated between stars, passing frozen planets and sleeping suns, ignored by countless civilizations. Most advanced worlds had learned to stay away from distress calls. They were afraid of traps, wars, and unknown dangers. But the signal didn't stop. It kept traveling until it reached one of the most dangerous planets ever known, Earth. On Earth, humans were busy with their daily lives. Cities glowed with lights, skies were filled with satellites, and the planet hummed with energy. But deep inside a space observatory in Chile, a young scientist named Dr. Aidan Ross noticed something strange. A weak rhythmic sound was appearing again and again on his radar. It wasn't noise. It was a message. He and his team worked for hours, decoding every tone, every pattern, until suddenly the screen lit up with alien symbols. The words appeared in broken form, but the meaning was clear. "We are dying. Please help us," Aidan froze. It wasn't a dream or a movie. It was real. Humanity had just received a cry for help from another intelligent species. Within hours, the discovery reached global news. Every nation was alert, and scientists around the world started decoding more data. The aliens' location was traced to a distant solar system, 4 light-years away. Images showed a small blue-green world covered in storms and lightning. It was beautiful but terrifying. Governments held secret meetings. Some leaders wanted to ignore the signal. They said it could be dangerous, an alien trick, maybe a trap. Others argued that it was a chance to make history. The world stood divided. But the people didn't wait. Across social media, millions began to speak up. They said, if someone is asking for help, we can't just stay silent. Humans, after all, had always been the species that ran toward danger when others ran away. Within days, volunteers started joining what became known as Project Dawnreach. Engineers, scientists, medics, and astronauts came forward. Some were driven by curiosity, others by compassion. They didn't know what they would find, but they were ready to risk everything. The mission was not about conquest or colonization, it was about mercy. Humanity had fought wars, faced disasters, and survived extinction-level threats before. Now they were ready to use that strength to save another world. In an underground base, ships were being prepared. Massive transporters carried medical supplies, food packs, and construction machines. Drones were programmed to build shelters and purify air. The world had seen many space missions before, but never one like this. This was not science fiction anymore. It was a rescue mission across the stars. Meanwhile, on the dying planet Arindra, the aliens had almost lost hope. Their skies were filled with purple lightning. The air was heavy with poison. They looked up at the stars every night, praying to gods that no longer answered. Their elders told stories of old times when the universe was kind, but now all they saw was destruction. Children were born weak, their wings too fragile to fly. Their leaders had already accepted that their race would soon disappear. But one night something appeared in their sky, a cluster of bright lights moving fast, glowing like falling stars. The Arindrans watched in silence as the lights grew bigger and brighter. Some hid in fear, others fell to their knees. The lights didn't crash. They stopped above the clouds. From the ships of Earth, human voices spoke in a language of peace. The aliens didn't understand the words, but they understood the tone. It was calm, steady, full of care. On Earth, the news spread like wildfire. People gathered around screens as live footage showed the first human ships landing on an alien planet. The world held its breath. Cameras inside the ships showed human rescuers stepping out, wearing protective suits, their helmets reflecting the storms around them. They were walking into chaos to save lives they had never met. The aliens watched from a distance, trembling. For years they had heard terrifying legends about Earth. In the galactic records, humans were known as Deathworlders. Their planet was considered one of the most dangerous places in the galaxy. It was full of deadly animals, violent weather, and diseases. Yet somehow humans not only survived, they thrived. Other species feared them because of their strength, their adaptability, and their fierce emotions. To the Arindrans, the idea of humans arriving was terrifying. They believed the Deathworlders would destroy them, take their resources, or enslave them. But when the first human stepped forward, everything changed. Instead of weapons, he carried a small box of food. He knelt, placed it on the ground, and opened his helmet so they could see his face. He smiled. That moment was more powerful than any speech. The aliens began to cry, some from fear, some from disbelief, and some from hope they hadn't felt in years. Back on Earth, people cried too. The entire planet watched as two different worlds met not in war but in kindness. A child from Arindra reached out its trembling hand and the human gently took it. That image traveled across galaxies. Humanity had answered the call. Days turned into weeks. The Deathworlders built shelters using materials that could withstand Arindra's violent weather. They taught the aliens how to store clean water, grow stronger crops, and filter air. Human doctors treated thousands of sick Arindrans. Every day, new friendships were born. The aliens began to understand the strange warmth in human nature, the need to help, to fix, to heal. Still, not everything was easy. The atmosphere was unstable. The storms made it hard to communicate. Some missions failed. A few human workers got injured and supplies ran short, but no one gave up. Every night, Commander Rhea, the mission leader, reminded her crew, "They called for help and we came. We will not leave until they can stand on their own." Her words spread through the team like fire in their hearts. Even though the galaxy still feared humans, something beautiful was happening on Arindra. The aliens began to paint symbols of gratitude on the walls of their rebuilt homes. They carved human names into their memory stones. They started calling the Deathworlders by a new name, the Guardians of the Lost Sky. As the first phase of the mission ended, Earth looked up at the stars with pride. No matter what came next, they had proven something important about humanity. They were not defined by their wars or their past. They were defined by their courage to care. And while the universe whispered stories of danger about the Deathworlders, one small alien child looked up at her mother and said, "The monsters saved us." That single sentence would one day travel across the galaxies, changing how every being saw Earth forever. The cry for help had been heard. The Deathworlders had answered, not with fear or greed, but with something far greater, the unbreakable heart of humanity. The journey to Arindra was not easy. The human fleet, known as Project Dawnreach, traveled for months through the emptiness of space. Every second of their voyage carried hope, fear, and uncertainty. The mission was huge. 10 ships filled with hundreds of people, thousands of supplies, and the dream of saving another species. Inside the main ship, Commander Rhea stood before the viewing window, staring at the distant light that marked Arindra's system. Her face was calm, but inside her heart raced. She knew this was history. Humanity had left Earth before, but this time they weren't explorers. They were rescuers. The team worked tirelessly. Engineers checked the ship's engines, medics prepared for unknown diseases, and scientists studied everything they could about the alien world. They had data from the distress signal, maps, atmosphere readings, and a few images, but most of it was damaged. No one truly knew what they would find there. Each person carried their own reasons for joining. Some wanted glory, some redemption, and some just wanted to do something good for once in their lives. But all shared one belief, that helping the weak was worth every risk. When they finally reached orbit, the crew gasped. Below them was a planet covered in storms. Lightning flashed across purple skies. Oceans swirled like boiling ink, and the land looked scarred and broken. It was both beautiful and terrifying. The sensors showed that millions of life forms were still down there, struggling to survive. Commander Rhea took a deep breath and said, "We begin at dawn." The descent was rough. The atmosphere shook their ships like toys. Flames covered the sky as they entered. The wind screamed and thunder cracked against the hull. For a moment, everyone feared the mission would end before it even began. But somehow they made it. The ships landed on a large plateau surrounded by black mountains. When the engines stopped, there was silence. Deep, haunting silence. Outside, the world looked like the end of days. The air smelled of burning metal. The ground was cracked and glowing with faint blue energy from underground fissures. The humans stepped out slowly, their boots crunching on dry dust. They planted flags with Earth's emblem and set up temporary shelters. Then, using drones, they started scanning the area for life signs. The first contact came unexpectedly. A group of small figures appeared on a ridge nearby, watching from the mist. Their skin glowed faintly like the surface of a pearl, and their eyes were large, reflecting light like mirrors. They were the Arindrans, the ones who had called for help. But they didn't approach. They stayed hidden, whispering among themselves, afraid. The humans didn't chase them. Instead, they left supplies, food, medical kits, and a small projector showing peaceful images of humans smiling and working together. For 2 days, nothing happened. Then on the third day, a single alien approached the camp. It moved slowly, trembling. Its arms were thin, its wings torn. It carried a small crystal device glowing weakly. The human translator tried to communicate, showing images of Earth and the distress signal. When the alien saw the signal pattern, its eyes widened. It recognized it. The alien dropped to its knees and made a strange sound, a mix of crying and laughter. It touched the ground before the humans, a sign of deep respect. That was the moment trust began. The alien, whose name was later learned to be Saren, became the bridge between two worlds. Through gestures, pictures, and technology, they learned to communicate. Saren told them about the storm, the hunger, and the dying energy source under their planet that was poisoning everything. The humans listened carefully. For every problem, they offered a solution. Engineers showed how to build water filters. Doctors demonstrated simple ways to clean wounds. Soldiers distributed blankets and built safe zones. Slowly, the aliens began to come out of hiding. The first time the children saw the humans, they screamed. Not in fear, but amazement. Humans were tall, strong, and their suits shone under the alien sun. The children followed them, curious. One brave little one even touched a human's hand, then giggled. That small act melted centuries of fear. Soon the camps grew into small towns. Human engineers used portable builders to raise walls, hospitals, and power grids. They worked side by side with Arindrans, showing them tools, teaching them how to repair machines. Every evening they shared meals. Though they couldn't understand each other's languages completely, they learned through kindness. When words failed, smiles spoke. When fear rose, patience answered. But not all Arindrans welcomed them. Some elders believed that the Deathworlders were only pretending to help. They feared that humans would take control, like ancient conquerors of myth. Commander Rhea knew this doubt could destroy everything they were building. So she made a decision. No human soldier would carry a weapon outside the base. The mission was about trust, not power. One night, a violent storm hit their camp. Lightning struck the towers and winds tore through tents. Panic spread among the aliens, who thought it was punishment for trusting outsiders. But instead of running, the humans fought the storm. They tied down shelters, carried children to safety, and used their own bodies to protect the weak. Commander Rhea herself stood in the middle of the chaos, giving orders while the rain slashed her face. The aliens watched, astonished. These Deathworlders, who were supposed to be cruel and dangerous, were risking their lives for strangers. When the storm ended, the damage was heavy. But no one died. The next morning, the Arindrans brought gifts, crystals, fruits, and handmade ornaments. They bowed to the humans and began calling them by a new name, the Bringers of Light. As weeks passed, the two species became family. Human children back on Earth sent video messages to alien kids showing them games and songs. The aliens, in return, taught the humans their ancient melodies that spoke of stars and survival. A deep friendship began to grow between Saren and Dr. Aidan Ross, the scientist who first found the SOS. Together, they studied the planet's energy core, trying to understand why it was becoming unstable. They discovered that a rare mineral in Arindra's crust was reacting violently with radiation from its sun. If not fixed, it would cause the planet's core to collapse, destroying everything. Aidan knew they had little time. He reported to Commander Rhea, who called for a new plan, Operation Haven. The goal was not only to save the aliens, but to save their world itself. It required building huge energy stabilizers, massive towers that could redirect the planet's magnetic field. It was dangerous work, but there was no other choice. The humans and Arindrans worked side by side under blazing storms, building the first stabilizer tower. Many fell sick from the radiation. Food ran short. Machines broke. But every time someone fell, another stood up. Commander Rhea's words kept them going. We came here to help. We will not stop halfway. In the quiet hours when the work paused, the humans would look at the sky. at the strange stars and the unfamiliar moons, and feel small, yet proud. They were thousands of light years from home, helping a species that once feared them, and despite the hardship, they felt peace. Then, one night, something incredible happened. The Arindran Council, once divided, gathered all their people and announced a historic declaration. They declared humans as their eternal allies. They promised that their children would remember the kindness of the Deathworlders for all generations. The ceremony took place under a clear sky, where the humans and aliens stood together, holding torches that glowed blue and gold. Commander Rhea stood quietly, watching as an alien elder handed her a pendant shaped like a star, carved from their sacred crystal. "You came from the world of death," the elder said in his trembling voice, "but you brought us life." That night, the humans didn't feel like visitors anymore. They were part of Irindra now, part of its pain, its fight, and its rebirth. And though they didn't know it yet, the biggest challenge was still to come. The planet's core was becoming more unstable by the day. A storm like no other was on its way. But for now, there was hope. The first contact between Deathworlders and the dying world had turned into a story of light, courage, and friendship that would soon be written into the stars forever. The calm after the storm did not last long. The humans and the Arindrans had built trust, shared food, and learned each other's ways. Hope was alive again, but beneath the surface of Arindra, danger was growing silently. The energy core deep under the planet had become unstable. Strange tremors shook the ground almost every day, and cracks of blue fire spread like veins through the soil. Scientists from both worlds warned that something terrible was coming. The stabilizer towers they had built were working, but not enough. They needed more time. Time the planet refused to give. Commander Rhea stood in the control room studying the readings on her holographic map. The energy lines pulsed like a beating heart about to burst. Dr. Aiden Ross entered, his face pale. "If we don't release the pressure in the next 72 hours, he said quietly, Irindra will collapse from the inside." His voice trembled. "We'll lose everything." Rhea didn't answer immediately. She looked out the window where hundreds of humans and aliens worked side by side, repairing damaged shelters, carrying food, and helping children. She couldn't let them die. "Then we find a way," she said finally. The new plan was desperate. They had to go to the heart of the storm, to the core station near the planet's central crater where energy activity was strongest. It was the most dangerous place on Arindra, full of radiation and violent magnetic storms, but if they could install the final stabilizer there, they might save the entire planet. The problem was getting there alive. The human team prepared for what they knew might be a one-way trip. Commander Rhea personally selected the crew. Dr. Aiden Ross for the energy system, Captain Silva for defense, and a few brave Arindran engineers, including Saren. The aliens didn't want to let humans go alone. "This is our world," Saren said firmly. "If we are to die saving it, we die together." When the small convoy left the safety of the main camp, the sky was already dark with swirling clouds. Lightning tore through the horizon and the wind screamed like a living creature. The ships shook as they flew low, dodging debris and flashes of plasma fire from the ground. Every few minutes, someone lost connection. It was chaos. Yet through all the fear, there was a strange kind of beauty. The sight of humans and aliens flying together into danger for one shared hope. They reached the crater at dawn. The ground glowed blue and red like molten glass. The air was thick with static. Every breath burned in the lungs. The temperature rose dangerously high. They could see the old alien power towers, broken, half-buried in lava, spitting out sparks. "This is it," Aiden whispered. "The heart of Arindra." The crew landed and began setting up the stabilizer generator. Every second mattered. Back at the main camp, the rest of the fleet watched their progress through weak signals. Commander Rhea's voice crackled through the speakers, giving updates. "We are halfway there," she reported. "Hold your positions." But inside the crater, the ground was trembling harder with each passing minute. Rocks fell from cliffs and the sky turned red as plasma clouds formed overhead. The stabilizer needed one more core component, a fusion converter. It was in the cargo hold of their ship a few hundred meters away. Captain Silva and Saren ran through the storm to fetch it. The wind nearly threw them off their feet. When they reached the ship, a violent shockwave hit, tearing part of the hull. The converter fell into a fissure of glowing lava. Without it, the stabilizer would not work. Saren looked at Silva, his eyes full of fear. "It's gone," he said. But Silva didn't listen. He jumped into the fissure, the heat burning his suit. He grabbed the converter with both hands and climbed back up, his arms shaking. His skin blistered from the heat, but he didn't stop. He handed the converter to Saren and smiled weakly. "Take it," he said. "Go save them." Moments later, the ground beneath him collapsed, swallowing him into the fire. Saren screamed, but there was no saving him. When Saren returned, carrying the converter, everyone fell silent. Ria's face hardened, but her voice stayed calm. "We finished this," she said. "For him." They connected the converter and activated the stabilizer. The machine came alive, sending a blinding light across the crater. Energy waves rippled through the sky, stabilizing the magnetic fields. For a moment, it looked like they had won. The tremors stopped and the readings improved. Everyone sighed in relief. Then the unexpected happened. The overload reading spiked again, far higher than before. The energy surge was too strong. The stabilizer was absorbing too much power. Aiden realized the truth. The planet's core wasn't stabilizing, it was collapsing. "It's not enough," he shouted. "We have to shut it down manually from the core chamber or the entire planet will explode." But reaching the chamber meant going deep into the fissure, where radiation levels were deadly. Ria didn't hesitate. "I'll do it," she said. Aiden grabbed her arm. "No, you can't survive that." She looked at him, her eyes steady. "This mission isn't about survival. It's about saving lives." Saren stepped forward. "If you go, I go." Ria shook her head. "No, Saren, your people need you alive. Promise me you'll lead them when this is over." The commander and Aiden went together into the fissure. The air shimmered with blue fire and every step burned their suits. They could hear the stabilizer's engines screaming as energy overloaded. Aiden reached the control node, his hands shaking. "We can reroute it manually," he said. Ria helped him open the panel. Sparks flew. "When I say go, pull the main lever," Aiden said. "That'll release the excess energy into space." They worked fast. The ground cracked open beneath them, light bursting through. Aiden yelled, "Now!" Ria pulled the lever. The sky exploded with light, white, blinding, pure. The energy wave shot into space, breaking through the storm clouds and lighting up the entire planet. In the main camp, humans and aliens fell to their knees, watching the heavens turn into a sea of light. The tremors stopped. The winds calmed. The planet was alive, but in the crater there was only silence. The fissure had collapsed. The rescue team searched for hours but found nothing, only the burnt remains of metal and glass. Commander Ria and Dr. Aiden were gone. Their sacrifice had saved Arindra, but they never returned. Saren stood on the crater's edge, tears glowing on his pale skin. He whispered, "No one gets left behind." It was a line he had learned from the humans, and now it felt like a prayer. Back at the base, the surviving crew gathered for a ceremony. They built a small monument from the pieces of the destroyed ship. On it, they carved the names of the lost. The Arindrans joined them, bringing blue crystals from their temples. Together they sang, humans and aliens, a song that mixed both languages, one of grief and gratitude. Weeks passed. The planet slowly began to heal. The sky grew clearer, plants started to grow again, and children laughed for the first time in years. The humans repaired their ships, preparing to go home. But the bond between the two species could never be broken now. The Arindrans had learned courage, and the humans had rediscovered compassion. One night, Saren visited the old crater. The wind was soft now, carrying the faint glow of the stabilizer tower that still pulsed gently with life. He placed his hand on the ground and whispered, "You didn't die for nothing." Above him, the stars shimmered, as if answering his words. When the human fleet finally left Arindra, the entire alien population gathered to watch. They held glowing lanterns that floated into the sky, filling it with thousands of tiny lights. It was their way of saying thank you. Commander Ria's last words before leaving Earth echoed in everyone's mind. Humanity was born on a death world, but we learned to protect life. Those words now belonged not just to Earth, but to two worlds joined by sacrifice. As the ships disappeared into the distance, the aliens looked at the horizon with hope. They had seen true heroism, not the kind written in books or sung in songs, but the kind that burns, bleeds, and gives everything. The Deathworlders had shown that strength is not in destruction, but in saving others. even at the cost of their own lives, and so a new legend began to spread across the stars, the story of the humans who came from a world of danger and darkness, only to bring light to another. Their names would be remembered forever, carried in songs etched in stone and whispered every time someone on Arindra looked up at the stars and said, "They came for us when no one else did." The battle that followed was unlike anything the galaxy had ever witnessed. As the Deathworlder fleet arrived near the orbit of Zalora, the alien planet that had sent the SOS, the skies lit up like a billion suns. The enemy ships were already surrounding the planet like vultures waiting for a final meal. The Zalorans had almost lost hope, their defense systems destroyed, their cities burning, and their communication channels collapsing one by one. But when the humans arrived, everything changed. Their ships didn't just move, they roared into action like living beasts, spreading across the battlefield with perfect coordination. Each move was planned, each strike carried purpose. Humanity had come not just to help, but to make a stand that would be remembered forever. On the command bridge of the flagship Titan's Oath, Commander Reyna Holt looked out at the view before her, flames, stars, chaos, and the desperate cry of a civilization on the edge of extinction. She took a deep breath. "Open all channels," she ordered. "This is Commander Holt of the United Terran Fleet. We are here, and we don't abandon those who ask for help." Her voice echoed across the stars, reaching the terrified hearts of millions of Zalorans hiding underground. For the first time in days, they looked up with hope instead of fear. The Deathworlders moved with terrifying precision. Their ships didn't rely on fragile shields or cowardly retreats. They fought with raw power, armor built from the hardest alloys ever forged, and weapons that could cut through darkness itself. The alien invaders had never faced something like them. Their scanners couldn't even predict human tactics, because humans didn't fight like machines. They fought like creatures that had survived hell, learned from pain, and refused to bow. When the first human assault began, the space around Zalora became a storm. The alien invaders fired plasma beams trying to overwhelm the humans through numbers, but the Deathworlders responded with what they called controlled fury. Missiles, railguns, laser bursts. Every weapon fired with brutal accuracy. Ships moved in perfect formations, covering each other, creating walls of metal and flame. To the watching Zalorans, it was like watching gods fighting for their survival. On the surface of the planet, Zaloran soldiers fought alongside a small group of human marines who had landed to defend key evacuation zones. Among them was Sergeant Leon Reyes, a woman known for her calm under fire. She led a team of only 20 humans but held back an entire wave of alien drones with strategy and courage. She didn't shout or panic. She gave short, sharp commands, moving her people like chess pieces. The Zaloran commander beside her couldn't believe his eyes. "You humans are insane," he said between breaths. She smiled faintly. "No," she replied. "We just don't know how to give up." Up above, Commander Holt was facing a much larger challenge. The enemy fleet's flagship, a monstrous vessel the size of a small moon, was preparing a superweapon strike aimed directly at Zalora's last safe zone. "If that thing fires, millions die," her second-in-command said. Holt's jaw tightened. "Then we don't let it fire." She made a bold move, sending her flagship directly toward the enemy's weapon core. It was a suicide tactic according to every known law of war. But Deathworlders didn't believe in laws written by fear. They believed in results. As Titan's Oath charged ahead, the rest of the human fleet formed a protective wall behind it, taking hits that could tear planets apart. The communication lines were filled with shouting, static, and courage. Every soldier, every pilot, every technician knew what was at stake. Some sang old Earth songs over the radio, others whispered prayers. The sound of humanity in unity was louder than the enemy's weapons. Meanwhile, on Zalora's ground, Sergeant Reyes' team was nearly out of ammo. Alien drones swarmed like metal locusts, breaking through their defense lines. Reyes looked at her team, exhausted and bleeding, and said, "Hold for 10 more minutes. The skies will clear." They didn't ask how she knew. They just believed her. And then the heavens exploded. The Titan's Oath slammed into the alien flagship, delivering a direct kinetic strike that shook the entire system. The explosion was so powerful that even the Zalorans underground felt the ground tremble. A wave of light covered the sky as the enemy fleet's core systems collapsed one by one. Commander Holt's last transmission echoed across every surviving ship. "For the living. For the lost. Humanity stands." The destruction of the enemy's flagship broke the invaders' morale. Their fleet scattered, some destroyed, others fleeing into deep space. The humans didn't chase. They had made their point. The Deathworlders had shown what humanity truly was. Protectors who could turn pain into power, fear into fire. After the explosion, silence fell over the battlefield. The humans slowly reconnected their communication lines, searching for survivors. Commander Holt's ship was gone, but her sacrifice had saved billions. The surviving human fleet formed in orbit, damaged but unbroken. On the planet below, the Zalorans emerged from hiding, looking up at the glowing debris that once symbolized their doom. Now it looked like stars of hope. Sergeant Reyes and her surviving soldiers helped rebuild emergency zones. The Zalorans treated them like heroes, offering everything they had: food, water, gratitude. But the humans refused luxury. "We don't fight for reward," Reyes said. "We fight because someone has to." Her words spread among the Zalorans like fire. They started believing not just in survival, but in courage. Later, a memorial transmission from Earth reached Zalora. It showed the faces of every fallen Deathworlder, men and women who had left home knowing they might never return. The message read, "Humanity does not conquer. Humanity protects." The Zalorans built a monument in the center of their capital city, made of silver and black stone. At the base, they engraved words in both their language and Earth's. They came from the world of death, yet they brought us life. Years later, Zaloran children learned about the humans in school. They spoke of Commander Holt and Sergeant Reyes as legends. And in every classroom, a simple truth was taught: that the strongest beings in the galaxy were not those who ruled with power, but those who fought with heart. The Deathworlders returned to their home systems, carrying memories of sacrifice, pain, and honor. Many of them had lost friends, ships, or parts of themselves in that war, but they knew it was worth it. They had answered a call for help, and they had delivered heroism beyond measure. Even in deep space, fragments of the destroyed alien flagship drifted silently, glowing faintly with energy. And among those remains, a small beacon pulsed. It carried a message, repeated over and over into the void, the final words of Commander Holt. "If you ever need us again, just call. Humanity hears." And somewhere, light years away, civilizations who once feared the Deathworlders listened in silence and felt something new for humanity. Not fear, not suspicion, but respect. Because that day when aliens sought help, humans didn't hesitate. They proved that even in a galaxy full of war and darkness, compassion could be the sharpest weapon of all. Months passed after the great battle for Zalora. The galaxy slowly began to heal, but the memory of what the Deathworlders had done remained alive in every heart. For the Zalorans, every sunrise now carried a story. The story of how strangers from a distant, dangerous world had come through fire and void to save them. And for humanity, it was not just a victory. It was a reminder of who they truly were. They had been called Deathworlders, beings from a violent planet where everything fought to survive. But through this war, they showed the universe that even those born in hardship could become protectors of peace. The rebuilding of Zalora was a massive task. Cities were in ruins, skies were still filled with debris, and millions of people were displaced. But something had changed in their hearts. They were no longer afraid. The humans had left behind technology, tools, and most importantly, hope. The Zalorans learned quickly, adapting human systems to their cities. They used human machines to clear rubble, grow crops faster, and rebuild homes stronger than before. Every time they looked at those machines, they remembered the faces of those who gave them. Sergeant Leon Reyes stayed for several months after the war. She worked with the Zaloran defense teams, training them not just in fighting, but in resilience. Courage, she told them once, isn't about not being afraid. It's about standing even when fear is screaming inside you. The young Zalorans listened to her like she was more than a soldier. She was a teacher, a symbol of what it meant to be unbreakable. One day, she visited the memorial that had been built for Commander Reyna Holt. It stood in the heart of Zalora's capital, surrounded by flowers that the Zalorans said only bloomed in the presence of light energy. The statue showed Holt standing tall, her hand raised toward the stars. Beneath it were her last words: "For the living, for the lost, humanity stands." Reyes placed a small metallic badge, the same one she had worn on her uniform during battle, at the foot of the monument. Her eyes watered, but she smiled softly. "You did it, Commander," she whispered. "You saved them." The Zalaran leaders sent messages of peace and gratitude to Earth. The Galactic Council, which had long seen humans as dangerous and unpredictable, began to see them differently. Reports from survivors described how humans fought side by side with no thought of reward, how they shielded civilians with their own bodies, and how they never left anyone behind. Many alien species who had once feared the Deathworlders now wanted to ally with them. The galaxy that had looked at humanity with suspicion now started to respect them. Back on Earth, things had changed too. News of the victory spread fast. Every major city across the planet celebrated the heroes who had gone to save another world. There were processions, memorials, and silent prayers for those who had never returned. The families of the soldiers received letters written in the calm, strong voice of Commander Holt before the final battle. In those letters, she wrote not about fear or death, but about love. Love for their world. Love for what humanity could become if it stood united. Children grew up hearing stories about the Battle of Zalora. Teachers described how a small group of humans fought not for power, not for land, but simply because someone asked for help. They taught students that bravery was not about fighting enemies, but about protecting those who couldn't protect themselves. In classrooms, they played Holt's final message. "If you ever need us again, just call. Humanity hears." Those words became legendary. Meanwhile, in space, new alliances were being formed. Human scientists worked with Zalaran engineers to build what they called the Bridge of Hope, a massive station floating between Earth's solar system and Zalora's world. It wasn't a military base. It was a symbol of friendship, trade, and shared learning. Thousands of humans and Zalarans worked together there every day. They shared ideas, cultures, and dreams. The once fearful aliens now welcomed humans as brothers and sisters among the stars. Sergeant Reyes eventually returned to Earth. She had changed. She had seen death and heroism, loss and light, but her heart carried peace. When she arrived home, reporters crowded her, asking questions about what it felt like to fight on another world. She simply said, "We didn't fight to be remembered. We fought because someone believed in us enough to ask for help." That sentence went viral across planets. People quoted it, painted it on murals, and carved it on monuments. A few months later, she visited the United Terran Command headquarters, where a new room had been built, the Hall of Honor. Inside it were holograms of every human who had fought in the Zalaran War. Their names glowed in soft light, along with messages from Zalaran children, thanking them in their own language. Reyes stood silently, watching as the lights flickered gently like stars. She thought about Holt again, and about all the people who had given everything. Maybe, she thought, this is what being human really means, to keep giving, even when nothing is promised in return. The galaxy moved forward. Trade between humans and Zalarans grew. Medical exchanges helped cure diseases on both planets. Artists painted murals of the Deathworlders surrounded by the light of Zalaran gratitude. Pilots named their ships after fallen heroes like Holt's Flame and Reyes's Oath. Even centuries later, people would still tell the story of the day humanity heard a cry from the stars and answered it. But not everything was peaceful forever. In the shadows of unknown galaxies, other civilizations watched. Some feared humanity's growing strength. Others admired it. But one thing was certain. No one dared underestimate Earth again. The term Deathworlders had changed meaning. It no longer meant savages or survivors. It meant guardians. Whenever anyone said that word now, it carried honor. For the Zalarans, each year they held a festival called the Day of the Signal. It was the anniversary of when they had sent that desperate SOS into the dark and humanity had answered. The whole planet would light up with floating lanterns that rose into the sky, symbolizing the message that had once traveled through the void. They played recordings of the humans' arrival, the roaring ships, the commands, the final explosion that had saved them all. The children of Zalora would point to the stars and say, "That is where the heroes came from." And somewhere, deep in the galaxy, a small probe drifted silently. It carried Holt's final beacon, still transmitting every few minutes. The message had been heard by hundreds of civilizations by now, some of whom had never seen humans before. It simply said, "If you ever need us again, just call." That beacon had become a symbol, a promise that no one in the universe would ever be truly alone as long as humanity existed. Years later, when Sergeant Reyes grew old, She often looked up at the night sky. The stars always reminded her of that battlefield, of Holt's bravery, and of the moment she saw hope return to the eyes of an alien child. She sometimes spoke at schools, telling young ones about the power of unity, kindness, and courage. When one student asked, "Do you think humans will ever be needed like that again?" she smiled softly and said, "The universe is big. Someone will always need help, and I believe we'll always be there." When she passed away, she was buried with full honors. The Zalaran Council sent a message of mourning across light years, declaring a day of remembrance in her name. The Bridge of Hope station dimmed its lights for one full rotation in her honor, and at her grave a small plaque was placed beside her name. It read, "Here rests a Deathworlder, a protector of peace." Centuries later, explorers found traces of the old war remains floating in the cold space near Zalora. They said the area still glowed faintly, as if remembering the fire that had once burned there. They called that place the Guardian's Belt. Every passing ship lowered its shields and flew in silence as a sign of respect. And so, the story of the Deathworlders lived on, not just as warriors, but as heroes who proved that the fiercest hearts often come from the harshest worlds. The galaxy changed forever because once, in a moment of desperation, an alien world sent a cry for help, and humans answered with light. The legend spread through time, told in songs, books, and holograms, but the truth behind it remained simple. They were humans, fragile, imperfect, emotional, yet capable of a courage so vast that it could light up galaxies. And maybe, somewhere out there, someone else would one day whisper into the dark, "Help us." And when they did, the stars would remember the promise. Humanity would hear, and once again, they would come.